Somebody asked about how I clean my sand in my duck yard, so I wanted to go over video on that. And you know, sand is a great substance to put in your duck yard, and it works very well provided that you keep it clean. So I wanted to go through my system, how I clean my sand. I'm sure there's lots of different ways to do that. Before I do that, I want to talk about the sand itself in terms of how your sand should be when you're in your duck yard. So first off, your sand should be nice, light, and fluffy like this, okay? You want to be able to, when your ducks walk across it, they go in and out of the sand, and it's not flat and compacted. Over here, you can see that it's been compacted a little bit from them stomping on it. So one of the things that you really want to be able to do if you choose to use sand is have a way to break that compaction off. And I'll talk about how I do that a little bit later. The other thing that you don't want with your sand is you don't want them to continuously, alright guys, there we go. You don't want continuously it to be wet, because if your sand is wet all the time and the ducks are trampling on it, their tissues at the bottom of their feet get soft and it makes them much more vulnerable to getting a foot infection. And the reason that this sand is really wet is because it's got muck all over it. Ducks tend to defecate in the area where they're drinking, and this is the drinking area, which I talked about in a different video. And so generally when I'm cleaning the sand, it's this area that has a majority of the muck, also by where they eat. Okay, so those are the two things that you want to make sure that you are aware of with sand. One, you don't want it to get compacted, and two, you want it to remove the muck so that it can filter the water away to stay dry. So I just wanted to show you that before I talk about how I clean the sand. A sand cleaning station, basically what it is it's a 55-gallon drum that I've cut the top off, and then I rested the drum onto these two 4x4 stakes that go about 3 feet into the ground. I have a 6-inch bushing that goes from the drum through the wood, and then on this side you've got a flange, and then in here you've got another flange, and in there another flange, and then a final bushing to basically hold it all together. The reason that I did it this way is because I wanted to be able to rock this drum to remove the sand, which is what this handle is for. You see I can rock it pretty easily. So the sequence is take the sand, put it in the drum, fill with water, take a hand rake, basically try to separate the muck from the sand, put it into the water, and then you've got to remove the water. The way that I do that is I use this shop vac here that has a hose that goes up, goes through the fence, goes to another 55-gallon drum, and then there's another hose that comes out of that, and that is the hose that I'll be using to suck the water out with. So cleaning sand basically takes multiple rinses, I would say anywhere from 5 to 7 depending upon how dirty your sand is. So you're going to of course generate a lot of mucky water. To me, that water is the best part of the whole deal because it's great fertilizer, which I can use around my yard. So I like to collect it into this bin, and then I can remove it from this drum here and then move it all around my yard to all my different fruit trees. So this is this side of the sand cleaning station. I will go to the other side in a second to show you the back side of the system. So this is the back side. You can see I built a frame to hold the drum in. Here are the hoses that are coming out. I had to cut in 2 holes, and basically what these hoses are going into are the wands that you use to attach your vacuum accessories. So I had to sacrifice some wands to do that, but to me this was the best way for me to get a good tight fitting between the hose and the drum. So you know, the frame's pretty simple, nothing much. Basically making some kind of a box to rest it in. Then on this side I've got a 1.5-inch ball cock, which I can dump the water out of the drum, put it into this 5-gallon bucket, and then away we go. So that's the system that I did. Incidentally, I did try to use this 30-gallon HDPE drum, but I found that the suction was so bad it caused the side of the drum to collapse. So take 2 was to move on to metal, so that's what I did here. Plus I got a bigger drum so that I don't have to worry about moving all the water out multiple times when I'm cleaning the sand. So that's the system. I'll show you how it works in a sec. Okay, so I've shoveled out probably the first couple inches, top layer off there. Get relatively clean sand underneath, and I put it into this drum over here. So now I'm going to fill this drum up with water, and then I'm going to start to clean it. I'll show you how that works in a sec. So we've got water mixed with the sand. You can see how dirty and mucky it is. To separate the muck from the sand, basically what you're looking at is using something to separate it, and I use this hand rake here. So I'll show you how that works. Basically, and you can do it, I'm sure there's 9,000 ways to skin a cat here, but what you're basically doing is you're agitating the sand in the water constantly, trying to remove the muck. Try to remove as much muck per rinse as you can. And then you're going to notice, probably by the 3rd rinse, that your sand is white. And then another maybe 4 or 5 rinses after that, you got pretty clean sand. So you can see sand has a lot of debris in it. See these pine needles in it. This actually causes, one of the things that causes the sand to start to compact and to not filter properly. So you also have debris that you have to remove from the sand, which I do as well. But it's a combination of muck and debris in the sand reduces its ability to filter. So I'll go ahead and start cleaning, and then I'll show you how to do a suction the water off. You spend a couple minutes raking the sand, trying to get as much muck off it. It'll start looking like this, and then it's time to go ahead and get rid of the water. So I'll tip the drum a little bit, try to get all the water to a corner. Then I'll turn on top back, grab my hose, suck all the water out. And you can see it moving out at a pretty good pace. It's a lot easier to do this with 2 hands without holding the handle, but you get the point. So now what you've done is you remove the water, most of the water from here, and you put it into that drum over there. And then by the end of my cleaning session, I'll have a whole bunch of nice, delicious, yummy, high nutrient fertilizer that I can pour on my trees and put in my flower garden, things like that. You can see it's pretty clean, relatively white sand. I've gotten most of the debris out of it. See, it's over here. So the last step is disinfection of the sand, which I'll show you in a second. You need to disinfect your sand. This is what I use: sodium chlorite and citric acid. Depending upon how much water you have, you're going for anywhere between 1,000 to 500 ppm sodium chlorite. If you just want to do sodium chlorite alone, it actually does have very good disinfection properties. But when you add citric acid to the mix, you've now created something called activated sodium chlorite, otherwise known as ACS, which is an extremely powerful decontaminating solution. And that's what I use. So this is about for, let's say if you have about a gallon to 2 gallons of water in your sand, you would use about 100 grams of this and a pound of this. This is very expensive. This is not so expensive. You can get about 15 pounds of citric acid for about $15, or excuse me, 5 pounds for $15. This actually is a lot more expensive. I think this is a 2-pound bag that I got for 60 bucks. So, but obviously you need a lot more of that than you do of that. So I will show you what it looks like when you put this material in. Basically what it creates is it drops the pH down, and it releases the chloride ion, which is what kills everything, and then turns a lot of stuff into carbon dioxide. So you'll see a lot of percolating like a soup in there, but I'll show you that in a second. So this is what it looks like about 20 minutes after you have added your ingredients in and mixed it up. You can see it is bubbling and boiling away. My understanding, this material kills almost on contact, so after 20 minutes you've pretty much done what you needed to do. Typically during that 20 minutes, that's when I'll go take time to empty out the drum and move it around my garden. For this particular session, I got about 30 gallons of fertilizer water from the 7 rinses that I did. But this is what it looks like following about 20 minutes. Now this material you probably don't want to dump in your garden because it is a sterilant. So what I typically do is I basically just dump it back into the duck yard, because it's going to disinfect the sand anyway. I'll dump it into an area where the ducks don't typically go, but my understanding is that after the reaction has occurred, this is very non-toxic to the birds. In fact, there is a product that is activated sodium chlorite solution that you can get from a agro store that people use to actually rinse their coop out. So it is one of the best decontaminants that you can use that is gentle to the birds. So anyway, so that's the whole kit and caboodle. You've got your sand, cleaning stations, your fertilizer water, your decontamination solution. I think that's about it. I will have a link below this video that will show you a thread where I talk about how I built this stuff, the materials I used, a little bit more general information about the building aspect of it, and then, you know, feel free to ask any questions you have below. I will try to answer them as quickly as I can. But this is the process that I use to clean my sand. I've had many different procedures that I've used. This is the one that I'm pretty happy with so far in terms of being able to clean the sand and reduce the amount of labor that I have to do. So anyway, thanks for watching. The last part after you clean your sand is decompacting it. So what I use is this cordless tiller. It's made from Black & Decker. I think it's called the LGC 120. What it has on the bottom of it is basically 2 spiraling tillers that will dig into the ground, basically churn it up, and get it uncompacted. I've used a manual tiller, like a hand tiller. That was a lot of work, so I decided to move to something that had power. But I didn't want to have anything that was really powerful, like a Manus or a hardcore tiller, because I thought it would kick the sand everywhere. So, you know, when I use this, it's actually pretty, you know, it doesn't make that much noise, and you just let it do its work, and it basically decompacts everything for you. Okay? So that's what I use to decompact my sand.